All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to fundamentally change how you look at the absolute most ubiquitous data tool in the entire world, the table.
I mean, you see them absolutely everywhere, right? From basic website layouts to your favorite restaurant's menu, and of course, serving is the very beating heart of Microsoft Excel. Information is literally the most crucial asset for every organization today. With quintillions of bytes of data being generated constantly, we rely so heavily on tables just to make sense of it all. But here's the thing. Despite how often we use them, most of us are kind of using them wrong. We just assume that because data is arranged in a nice little grid, our visual processing centers are doing the heavy lifting. But are tables actually visual tools? Well, the short answer is no, not inherently. And this profound misunderstanding is exactly why so many reports completely overwhelm their audiences instead of actually informing them.
So, to understand why, we really need to define what we're actually looking at. Analysts often refer to tables as crosstabs or matrices, but their defining characteristic, the whole shebang, is that they emphasize raw individual values way above aesthetic formatting. Unlike, say, a pie chart or a line graph that just gives you a general shape or trend of the data, a table's primary job is to give you the exact number. It provides the granular truth entirely without abstraction, and that's what makes it one of the most essential methods for analyzing data.
Let's break down the basic anatomy of how these are constructed. Similar to a traditional graph, tables arrange data along axes. Because we're trained to read left to right, it's customary to place your qualitative categories along the x-axis, your rows. Then the y-axis, your columns, depicts the values within each metric with clearly labeled columns indicating what those numbers actually signify. So you might map regions like North America or Europe on the left to columns showing November 2018 profit or 2019 total sales on the right. In contrast to standard charts, tables are uniquely powerful at arranging this qualitative data and showing the direct, precise linkages between different dimensions.
Analysts absolutely love this structure, and for very good reason. The main use case is pinpointing specific values and identifying measurements across a set of intervals. If your manager suddenly asks, hey, what was the exact profit in November 2018, or how many sales did each specific rep close in 2019, a table is hands down the fastest way to look up that precise value. Plus, summary tables are incredibly efficient at distilling massive datasets by providing subtotals and grand totals for each of those intervals. It gives decision makers the exact figures they need right when they need them.
But here is the massive myth we really need to bust today. A table is not intrinsically visual. Why? Because reading numbers is actually a linguistic exercise. When you look at a grid of raw data, your brain literally has to read each number, process it linguistically, and then hold that value in your working memory just to compare it to the next one. A true visualization, like a bar chart, bypasses this entirely. It excites the brain's visual systems, allowing you to instantly perceive size, shape, and contrast without technically reading a single thing.
And because of this heavy linguistic processing, tables actually have a hard biological limit. Human working memory can only hold so many discrete numbers at once. According to the research, this means raw tables scale incredibly poorly. The magic threshold? It's about 10 to 15 rows and exactly 5 columns. Anything more than that pushes the human brain way past its natural processing capacity. I mean, just think about that for a second. 15 rows and 5 columns. How many massive spreadsheets have you stared at today that were hundreds of rows deep and dozens of columns wide?
Pushing past that tight constraint guarantees one thing for sure: cognitive overload. Exceed that limit, and the table becomes incredibly difficult to read, comprehend, and actually draw any real insights from. Instead of faster decision-making, your stakeholders are just left staring at a massive wall of text, desperately trying to mentally calculate differences. It's a guaranteed recipe for missing crucial red flags or completely overlooking emerging opportunities hidden in the data.
So what's the solution here? Well, if you absolutely must display a large tabular dataset, you have to rescue that bloated matrix by adding visual features. You keep the grid structure, your rows of categories and columns of data, but it's no longer a linguistic roadblock. By layering in visual elements, you excite the brain's visual systems. This allows the user to assimilate the data, identify patterns, and spot outliers exponentially faster than they ever could with a simple, raw table.
Upgrading your table is really all about strategic design choices. First off, you can use gradients of color and size. A simple heat map applied to a column of numbers instantly draws the eye to the highest and lowest values, identifying trends without forcing the reader to process every single digit. Second, introduce icons, like little up or down arrows, to instantly signal a shift in proportions or performance over time. And finally,
Using different graphical markings within the cells highlights relationships far more effectively than a raw grid of text ever could. You're basically bridging the gap between linguistic reading and visual processing. A real game changer.
When constructed simply, keeping that row and column limit in mind, of course, and enhanced visually, tables remain incredibly handy tools. Their true, ultimate purpose is comparative analysis. When you need the audience to know the exact difference between two crucial data points, a visually enhanced table delivers that precision, while still guiding the eye and telling a clear, cohesive story.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a critical filter for your future work. Before you drop another massive raw spreadsheet into your next report, stop and ask yourself, is this crosstab intentionally designed to highlight a specific comparative analysis? Or are you just creating a linguistic roadblock that will completely overwhelm your audience? Remember, data is only as valuable as our ability to understand it.
We are tackling a super relatable and honestly pretty painful truth of the business world. You know the feeling, spending hours, maybe even days, grinding on a data-driven report, only for it to end up in what I like to call the report graveyard. I mean, think about this quote. The last thing one anticipates is for someone to actually read it. It sounds a bit cynical, right? But let's just acknowledge that frustration for a second. You produce a report packed full of vital numbers, but if it fails to actually leave an impression and convey its core ideas, well, all that hard work is essentially useless. So, that brings us to the ultimate question. How do we make data actually leave an impression? Whether you're conveying big ideas or seeking help, the solution is actually pretty straightforward. You have to present the report in a style that is both attractive and, most importantly, simple to comprehend. And the absolute best way to do this, especially if your layout is heavy on numbers, is by leveraging data visualization. We are going to transform your raw numbers into a compelling data story through 5 strategic steps. Find a story in the data, create a narrative, choose suitable visualizations, follow the visual language, and finally, publicize the report. All right, let's look at step 1. Finding a story in the data. Now, data-driven storytelling is a seriously powerful tool. And finding a story that genuinely connects with your reader, it's really not as hard as it looks. You basically just have to play data detective. To locate the story, first arrange your data. Then, identify any missing numbers and check for outliers. Once you've done that, you can step back, view the data as a whole, and examine the links between different factors to find your core message. Moving right along to step 2. Creating a narrative. So there's this massive and very frequent misconception that data storytelling just means tossing a few statistics onto a page, declaring the task complete, and calling it a day. That is entirely false. Strong data storytelling actually requires an engaging narrative that actively takes your audience through the facts. It literally aids in their comprehension by explaining the actual significance of these ideas. To compose a truly excellent story, you need to do a few specific things. First, engage the viewer right out of the gate with a catchy title and subheadings. But remember, numbers mean nothing in a vacuum, so you absolutely must incorporate context into the data. From there, create a consistent and logical flow from beginning to end. And lastly, make sure you highlight the most significant discoveries and insights so your audience knows exactly what the big takeaways are. Okay, step 3. Choosing the most suitable visualizations. Data visualization is definitely not limited to just randomly creating charts and graphs. It's really about presenting the facts in the most comprehensible format possible. Applying basic design principles, utilizing things like form, size, color, and clear labeling can have a massive impact on how people actually comprehend the data. For instance, just deciding on the optimal number of slices for a pie chart, or the exact right space between bars and a bar graph. Knowing these little tips can greatly improve your visuals. Now for step 4, following the visual language. Whether your report is designed for internal use or external consumption, this part is crucial. You have to develop material that is consistent with the company's style guide. Adhering to strict data visualization principles is absolutely essential if you want to achieve both brand uniformity and clear comprehension. Having a strategic methodology here really assists in the implementation. And finally, step 5, publicizing the report. Now, some reports are initially not intended for public consumption. But think about this. They may contain knowledge that is of interest to individuals or media outside of the business. Because internal reports often include so much essential, data-rich information, publicizing them can actually capture the interest of a much wider audience outside the business. It's a hugely overlooked opportunity. So I'll leave you with this final question. How will you redesign your next report?
Are you going to keep sending raw numbers straight to the report graveyard, or are you going to use these 5 strategic steps to design a compelling data story?
We're tackling a massive challenge that we face every single day, taking dense, complex data and actually making it mean something to an audience. Information is everything, right? But having the data and showing it effectively are 2 totally different beasts. If you want to boost your productivity and make sure people actually grasp the insights you're sharing, you absolutely need the right tools and techniques for visual presentation. So that brings us to the big question. How do data scientists actually boost productivity? Because let's be honest, trying to make sense of complex information without visual aids is practically impossible. How do we make our daily presentations more compelling and efficient without just getting totally bogged down in endless formatting or coding?
Well, the answer is by mastering 4 incredibly popular data visualization tools. Think of these software options as your essential, everyday toolkit. We're not talking about fancy add-ons here. These are fundamental applications that assist data scientists in making their findings crystal clear, highly actionable, and visually striking. Getting really comfortable with these, it's going to completely change the way you work. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap of the 4 specific tools we'll examine today. 1. Tableau, the interactive heavyweight. 2. Power BI, centralized business intelligence. 3. Excel, the intuitive standard. And 4. ClickView, drag-and-drop discovery.
First up, number 1, Tableau, the interactive heavyweight.
Tableau is an application specifically designed for creating dynamic, interactive graphs, charts, and maps. The beauty of it is that it lets you connect to a bunch of different data sources and spin up visualizations in literally minutes. Honestly, as a data scientist, this is absolutely the most important tool you should understand and employ on a daily basis.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the clear distinction between the 2 versions. Tableau Desktop, which was the very first product of its kind, produces static visualizations that you can publish on web pages, but it actually can't produce interactive maps. Then you have Tableau Public, which is a totally free version of Tableau Desktop, but it does come with a few restrictions.
Look, it definitely takes some time and effort to fully understand Tableau. But there are tons of tools out there to help you get the hang of it. You can access it and start exploring right now at tableau.com. Putting in the effort to climb that learning curve is going to pay huge dividends for your productivity.
Moving right along to number 2, Power BI, centralized business intelligence.
So the crucial point is how Power BI functions as a centralized repository. It's essentially a consolidated reporting system where all of your business data is stored and it's totally accessible to all business users. It really sets itself apart by empowering end users to generate reports and seamlessly share insights across their whole organization.
Let's quickly run through its capabilities. It handles reporting, self-service analytics, predictive analytics, and organizational report sharing. Because those prepared reports can be shared internally through established linkages, it really is a crucial tool for any business looking for a completely consolidated data reporting system. If your organization needs to centralize its intelligence and get everyone on the same page, this is the one to check out. You can find it at powerbi.microsoft.com.
All right, tool number 3, Excel, the intuitive standard. And this brilliantly illustrates just how ubiquitous Excel really is for analyzing statistical, scientific, medical, and economic data. Thanks to its incredibly familiar, intuitive interface, it's really not difficult to use, and it remains an absolute staple across virtually every industry. Excel gives us a ton of viewing options. You've got scatter plots, bar charts, histograms, pie charts, line charts, tree maps, the whole shebang. By using these visualization techniques, you can easily illustrate relationships between 2 or more data sets that you want to compare, or examine variables just to see if they're actually connected.
It really plays such a vital role in everyday tasks like market research and financial planning. You can grab it over at Microsoft.com. And finally, number 4, ClickView, drag-and-drop discovery. ClickView is essentially this really robust data discovery platform that significantly speeds up analytics. It's an easy software development kit that enterprises worldwide have relied on for years to uncover brand new business insights, enhance their precision, and ultimately make much quicker, more informed choices. The features here are what make it so appealing. It effortlessly mixes diverse data sources and visualizes them with color-coded tables, graphs, and sliders. But the real game changer is the drag-and-drop interface. You can input data directly from databases and spreadsheets without having to write a single line of code, which, makes it a reasonably easy tool to learn and master.
If you want to speed up your workflow and uncover fresh insights without needing complex programming, you can access ClickView at clickview.com.
So, we've walked through the interactive power of Tableau, the centralized intelligence of Power BI, the intuitive standard of Excel, and the code-free discovery of ClickView. The right visualization tool won't just boost your productivity, it guarantees your insights actually get heard. So think about it.
Have you ever found yourself staring at a massive, complicated spreadsheet and wondering, how on earth am I going to make this make sense to a boardroom? Well, you're definitely in the right place. Today, we're diving into the really fascinating world of transforming raw data into powerful, visually engaging presentations. And to make this super practical, we'll be following a totally relatable real-world case study to guide us through the whole process. So let's just jump right in. Let's talk about Sutapa. She's an analyst over at SN Company Limited, and she's just been handed a pretty massive responsibility. She has to deliver a high-stakes presentation right to the senior management, the C-suite. Now, Sutapa knows that data visualization is an absolutely critical tool here. She knows good visuals are going to make her findings hit so much harder. But here's the catch. She isn't entirely sure exactly which data visualization tools are out there or which ones make the most sense for her specific numbers. So what exactly should Sutapa put in her toolkit to make this presentation a total knockout? Here's a quick look at our agenda today. We'll start with Sutapa's presentation challenge, move into the objectives of data visualization, go over the rules for effective visualization, look at essential data visualization tools, and finally, wrap up with popular software platforms.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Sutapa's Presentation Challenge, Making Data Speak.
Get this, studies actually show that 65% of people are visual learners, literally more than half the room. For Sutapa, that means if she walks into that C-suite meeting and just throws up endless, tiresome tabular reports, she's going to lose her audience almost immediately. But giving those decision makers a clear visual representation of the facts, that dramatically improves their comprehension and ultimately leads to way better strategic judgments. You know that classic saying, a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? Well, honestly, it has never been more true than in business analytics. The sheer volume of in-depth data we all have access to today is just staggering. But as we know, pulling the data and actually presenting it are two completely different beasts. Sutapa needs to use visuals to bridge that massive gap between raw, messy information and crystal clear strategic understanding. Moving right along to Section 2, Objectives of Data Visualization, the why. So why do we even visualize data in the first place? Sutapa basically has three main goals here. First, making a better data analysis. Visual mediums literally force stakeholders to look exactly where their attention is needed. Second, faster decision-making. It allows those busy executives to move quickly on fresh insights. And third, analyzing complicated data. When you cut through all that noise and complexity, it becomes so much easier to spot new trends or even hidden red flags that were hiding flawlessly inside a giant spreadsheet. Now for Section 3, Rules for Effective Visualization, the how. To really nail this, Sutapa needs to stick to 4 golden rules. Step 1, know the objective. Is she just declaring last quarter's revenue, or is she exploring if a marketing spend actually caused a sales spike? Step 2, always keep the audience in mind. Remember, the C-suite needs high-level, relevant strategy, not the super granular details a line manager might want. Step 3, invest in the best technology, utilizing centralized repositories. And Step 4, constantly improve the team's ability to actually visualize that data. Which brings us to Section 4, Essential Data Visualization Tools, the what. First up in the toolkit is the dashboard. Let's take a traveler spend analysis as an example. Dashboards are incredibly interactive, which means Sutapa can manage important metrics across a bunch of different channels all at the same time. It gives her senior management a totally comprehensive view of the company's performance in a single glance, taking vast amounts of results and wrapping them up into one cohesive, easy-to-read interface. Next is the scatter plot. When you're trying to compare unique data points, say the number of holdings versus irrigated areas, this is your best friend. If Sutapa needs to show the relationship between multiple variables, or prove whether one thing is actually a good predictor of another, a scatter plot is a brilliant choice to throw into her presentation. Now, what if her presentation involves project management or operational planning? In that case, she should absolutely deploy a Gantt chart. These are specifically designed to map out a project's timeline. They perfectly showcase different activities, their dependencies, and exactly how they might change or overlap as time goes on. When we start dealing with proportions, a bubble chart is just fantastic. It shows the link between 3 or more variables by changing the size and color of the circles, which makes displaying enormous amounts of data super engaging. Or, there's always the classic pie chart. It's highly effective for simply showing smaller parts of a whole. Just a quick pro tip though, make sure you don't use too many slices, or it gets messy fast.
Let's round out Sutapa's toolkit with a few more heavy hitters. Need to easily compare data across categories? Grab a bar chart. Showing how data is distributed among distinct groups? That's a histogram. Line charts are your absolute standard for displaying trends over a period of time. And finally, maps. They're essential if you're plotting geographical data, like tracking performance across different PIN codes or regions.
Okay, final section. Section 5. Popular software platforms, the where. First on the list is Tableau. Tableau is this highly advanced industry-leading application that is specifically designed to create beautiful interactive graphs, charts, and maps. What makes it a real game changer for someone like Sutapa is that it lets her connect to tons of different data sources and spin up complex visualizations in literally minutes. It is an absolute must-have tool for any serious analyst. Next up is a familiar friend to pretty much all of us, Microsoft Excel. Excel is incredibly popular, mostly because of its intuitive, familiar interface. It gives you simple, readily available options like scatter plots and bar charts for immediate analysis, without having to suffer through a super steep learning curve. And honestly, she really needs to consider Microsoft Power BI. Power BI acts as a centralized repository for all of a business's data. It is just an amazing business intelligence tool for generating self-service reports and sharing those centralized insights seamlessly across her entire enterprise. It basically takes all these visualizations and makes them incredibly easy to consume and share across the whole network. So look at where she is now. By combining the right objectives, sticking to those 4 golden rules, utilizing varied chart tools like dashboards and scatter plots, and leveraging powerhouse software like Tableau or Power BI, Sutapa is no longer guessing. She is fully prepared to step into that C-suite meeting and completely crush it. She can take her department from being a simple reporting center and transform it into a predictive analytics powerhouse that generates real, tangible business value. Which brings us to our final, slightly provocative thought for this explainer. Think about Sutapa's whole journey for a second and apply it to your own day-to-day. When you are tasked with presenting to your team or your management, are you simply reporting the raw numbers, or are you actively utilizing these visual tools to tell a compelling, actionable story? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer,